Hey, in today's video, we're going to discuss education budgets, some problems that currently exist, and some solutions we can come up with. But first, I want you to check out this clip.
And we're failing badly with public education. We're failing horribly. We, of the 30 most developed countries on earth, we're number one for how much we spend per student, and we're 28th in results. So we're spending the money, we're just not getting the results. And forget about who's responsible. It's a problem in total.
Billionaire Ken Langone, co-founder of the Home Depot, says we are spending more money than anyone else on education. He believes we should create a Marshall Plan for public education to help save it and provide a better future for our students. Is this the kind of thinking that public education needs to survive? We'll take a look into this issue and more in today's video. While it is true that the U.S. is spending more money on public education than any other developed country, with a per pupil expenditure of $13,000 compared to an OECD average of $10,000, those other countries in OECD are actually gradually increasing their education budget, while the U.S. is gradually decreasing its education budget. Between the years of 2010 to 2014, spending per student decreased in the U.S. by 4%. Meanwhile, in other OECD countries, spending per student increased 5%. The other countries in OECD were making cuts to their national budget in order to make room for increases in the public education budget. Still, the U.S. is spending the most on public education, but we're still not getting the results we want. Other countries are able to get a lot more learning out of a lot less money. Why is that? We can begin to try and come up with an answer when we start looking at the differing types of education practices all across the world. For example, in the United States of America, teachers are expected to teach a larger amount of time than other countries. In the US, the average teacher spends about 1,000 hours a year teaching, compared to Japan and Korea, where they spend about 550 to 600 hours teaching a year. With fewer hours teaching, those teachers have more time to concentrate on lesson planning, collaboration with one another, and attending professional development. Of course, with fewer hours teaching, there is larger class sizes. Class sizes are kept much smaller in the US, which means we have to hire more teachers. One very important point that those at the Hechinger report make is the fact that we have a decreased education budget, but the way in which we use our money did not change at all. If we're going to make changes to the budget, we need to be changing the way in which we use that money. Let's take a look at some example districts and how well they use their money. The Atlantic put out an article a couple years ago that described the situation. We have a gigantic education budget, and that gigantic education budget is made up of tons and tons of different smaller district budgets. And we have some districts that spend their money very well, and we have some districts that do not. WalletHub did the math, and they found out that out of the 90 most populated cities in America, Miami, Florida, Grand Rapids, Michigan, and Richmond, Virginia were the ones who used their education budget the most efficient. The least amount of money led to the best test scores. This article also made mention of several districts that were spending their money in a very inefficient manner. The first one was Fort Worth, Texas, and the second one was, wait for it, Jefferson County Public Schools. This is the same district in Kentucky that is facing a current state takeover. Let's dive a little deeper into what has occurred there in recent years. Now, the information I'm about to provide for you comes from an article from year 2015 with some information that's even older than that. So all of this information may or may not reflect the current state of things at JCPS. However, it does reflect the fact that our current education system can allow for misappropriation of funds. Now, the current state of JCPS might be a lot uglier than just misused budgets. More on that later. Based on an audit that came out back in 2014, JCPS had outdated and inefficient operations that cost taxpayers millions of dollars, a school board that doesn't provide adequate oversight, an inconsistent contracting process, a toothless internal audit system, and serious security and privacy concerns. Wow. An example of these inefficient operations is the fact that 369 employees of JCPS back in 2014 were making over $100,000 a year. Just to give you some perspective, that is 3 times higher the amount of people making that same amount of money in counties that are similar to JCPS. Meanwhile, a survey's results showed that the teachers of JCPS were spending a lot of their own money to pay for school supplies in their classrooms. After the results of that audit came out, the superintendent and a school board member said that they would make improvements. We'll check back into the current #OurJCPS story in just a moment, but first, let's realize what we can learn from all this. Just because you throw money at something does not mean it will become better. The same year that JCPS had been audited, it had a district report card grade below the state average. Even though it had the kind of budget that could support 369 employees making over $100,000, all that money in the budget did not translate to students having more success. This reminds me of the reaction I got from some after they saw my teacher protest video. They reminded me that just because you throw money at a broken system does not mean it'll get better. It just means you'll have a more expensive broken system. So what is it then about our system that we need to fix? Personally, I see the value of teachers as being one of the most instrumental pieces to this puzzle. I think we need to show teachers more value by paying them more, providing them more solid medical benefits, and creating systems in place that allow learning to happen and teaching to happen a lot easier. Perhaps experimenting with some of those other elements of the Japanese or Korean style of schooling are some of those other missing puzzle pieces. Let me give you an astounding example of one of the many possibilities. This is Fuji Kindergarten, a school in Japan designed by Takaharu Tezuka. As you can see, the idea with this school is to allow children an open environment to learn in. There's plenty of room for them to move, and there are plenty of opportunities for the children to make mistakes. This was a deliberate part of the design so that children will be able to learn how to manage mistakes when they occur. There are few boundaries within the school and no boundaries between classrooms. This is so that children can learn to concentrate in noisy environments. If this school is blowing your mind the way it did mine the first time I saw it, you can find out more about it in the links I provide below. This is just one example of the possibilities that exist. There are a multitude of things to consider when budgeting the education of our next generation. Class size, salaries, infrastructure, those are just 3 things we've discussed so far in this video. Buses, computers, athletics, school lunches, school supplies, custodians, music, art, textbooks, don't get me started on the textbooks. Those are just a few things. We're just scratching the surface on all of the things that go into an education budget. So which of these things do you think we could change or make better to make our education budgets more efficient? Let me know. I'd love to hear your opinion. And now back to the current state of things at #OurJCPS. In last week's video, I discussed the fact that the state is recommending a takeover, and people of Jefferson County, both teacher and parent alike, are protesting this takeover vehemently. Well, this week's research revealed to me that there are some allegations out there about employees of JCPS that are really, really ugly if they're true. Apparently, one of the major reasons that the state is recommending this takeover is due to the actions of some employees of the Head Start and Early Head Start program of JCPS. Head Start is a program designed to help children from low-income families to be prepared for kindergarten. Districts receive federal money to implement and oversee these Head Start programs, and the achievement gap between the low-income and high-income students is supposed to be decreased. Now, for the JCPS Head Start program, numerous allegations just came out last week that there's been child abuse and leaving children unattended. According to the Department of Health and Human Services, there have been 21 accounts of abuse and neglect. More disturbing than this was the fact that last August there were 16 similar allegations against the same exact Head Start program of JCPS. These accounts included adults slapping students, spanking, forcing students to eat food, grabbing and squeezing kids by the arms, putting a student in a closet, and dumping children off cots onto the floor. This is what Education Commissioner Wayne Lewis had to say about it.
I'm the parent of a 3-year-old. I'm sure you guys have read this report. That includes some of the incidents that have been reported for these kids in Head Start. You know, for folks that don't know, with Head Start, you are talking about the most vulnerable young children in our community. And when I read reports about adults inappropriately putting their hands on children, you know, saying stuff to children, 3-year-olds, like, you don't know who you're messing with, dumping children out of cots, right? As a parent, I think, what would I do if I arrived to pick up my 3-year-old at the end of the day and I found out that that's what her day had consisted of? And to be completely truthful with you, I don't know what I would say or do. So the idea that we can be okay with any parent having to have their children go through something like that, and the dominant conversation we have in education policy in this state and this community is about local control, when children are not being cared for and adults are not being held accountable, it's inexcusable.
After the first round of reports last August of this abuse and neglect, the leaders of JCPS underwent an aggressive correction action plan. This included the firing of several teachers, this included the removal of certain people from their positions, and new education for everyone. But apparently that was not enough, because less than 1 year later, the same allegations are coming out again. The community of JCPS is probably more aware of these problems than anyone else, but they are still fighting against this state takeover. They believe they have been taking steps towards solving these problems, having replaced the superintendent and school board members. They believe that they will lose their voice and that it would be undemocratic if a state takeover were to occur. I'm still unsure where I'm at with this. I know that I prefer local control over state control, but that's under the assumption that both parties are competent. I'm not there in Jefferson County. All I can go off of is what's been reported to me. And I've been a teacher for years, and I understand how frustrating it can be to have something happen in a classroom or a school and it gets completely blown out of proportion and misconstrued by the community. It's incredibly frustrating. However, the fact that the same exact reports that came out last August are already happening again, and it's not just 1 or 2 reports, it's 37 total reports between August and now, is mind-blowing to me. All I could say is that whatever they've been doing to try and address this unfortunate situation needs to be radically changed. I'd love to know what your opinion is on this. Let me know. That's it for this week's video. I owe a big thanks to all of you who have subscribed to my channel and all of you that have been sharing my videos. I appreciate it so much. If you haven't subscribed to my channel, now is your chance. Last week's video covered Betsy DeVos and undocumented children in our school system and more. You can check out that video right now or wait till the end of this video to see that. Earlier this week, I published a podcast with Ryan Freeman, an attorney who allowed his expertise to shine some light on the DeVos situation. You can check out that link below. And because you stuck through the whole video all the way to the end, here's some extra footage of that amazing school in Japan. Thanks, it's been real.